Hello, everyone. Welcome to Advent Comics' very first YouTube review. We're going to be starting at the beginning with our very first book ever, a little graphic novel we call Pandemonium Evil Incarnate. So hopefully you stick around. This will be the first of many. Give you an introduction of Advent Comics and our books and what we're about, and hopefully you can see the process that we've gone through over these many years to bring these books to you. Well, first, this book, or the idea for this book, began even before Advent Comics was around. This book began with a thought process, talking with a group of friends who love comics just like we all do, about powers that be, or powers in the universe. Are there really such things as karma and higher powers? Basically, God. We kicked around a lot of different ideas, and we were like, we didn't see this in other comics that Marvel or DC or anybody else at the time were doing. So we were like, man, this would be an interesting title or interesting thing to go down the road and discuss and just put some stuff out there and see, how people are receptive to it. So we had two schools of thought. One, there's no such thing as a higher power. Or two, if you did believe that there was a higher power, there had to be an opposite force in the world, good and evil, basically. Is what all comic books boil down to, good and evil. This was our first foray into that. So when Advent Comics came around in late summer of 2009, actually Advent Comics was started August 1st, 2009. This book came out shortly after, maybe, I think it was around October or November when we first got the book out and got it printed. Has a beautiful cover, as you can see, by Bart Sears and Andy Smith, who we had met along the way, and we'll talk about how I met them along the way on a later broadcast, I guess. Got to save some stuff for future content, but the thought process behind this one graphic novel was, okay, we're going to have a discussion about good and evil, right and wrong, and I guess you could say whether there's a God or there isn't a God. So the first book we came out with, this graphic novel, Pandemonium Evil Incarnate, the process behind it was there is no God in the universe. What would it be like if there was no higher power, no belief system other than just us, ourselves, and the things that mankind gets into? Innately, I believe everyone's good. Everyone has good in them. Everyone has a little bit of evil in them as well. But we just went overboard on this particular book. We're going to dive inside, show you guys some of the content of the book. Now, we kept it like a true superhero book, but in order for us to tell the story that we wanted to tell with good and evil and cosmic powers and things of that nature, we came across, or we came up with several ideas, and we're like, how can we make all the stuff we want to do fit into one book? So we decided on an anthology type of book for the first graphic novel. As you can see by some of the contents here, we had about 6-7 stories that we told initially. We have superheroes. We do have stories that are science fiction in nature in this book. We have actually books that dabbled with the cosmic powers that we talked about. We had science fiction stories, you name it, it was in here. Also, long time ago, actually early 90s, I had created a little story that actually I was trying to, when I was trying to break into comics, shopped around to a few different people, and of course no one bid on the story. I did get some good reviews one time when I applied for the old Marvel imprint they were trying to find writers at the time. I think that was 97 or maybe around 96 or 97-ish. I can't remember, so long ago. But the story, or the story that I had in mind for Marvel, didn't quite pan out, but it was so good I didn't want to waste it. So I decided to do it in my own comic universe when I started to do this book. So the very first page of Pandemonium Incarnate, it sets up that particular story. I knew at some point, regardless of the story we want to tell about good and evil and God or no God in this particular book, that Cosmos story was going to be something that I was definitely going to get into at a later point. So this particular page sets up the Cosmos story. And people were like, yeah, that kind of didn't fit in with the book. You have this guy who appears from another universe talking about there's danger or evil, impending evil coming. Well, it did kind of fit. Everything was kind of mapped out for this long period of time. So this first page sets up the Cosmos story, which came years later. Some of the artwork. And I said, we introduced that our particular universe had a supreme being. But that supreme being left the universe. And basically, after the fall of heaven, for lack of another word, chaos ensued. So here's some of the art. Fall from heaven. The angels clashed in heaven, and basically in the Advent universe, God simply ceases to exist after that big clash in heaven, and it left a vacuum. So, like I said, I was always a big fan of anthology type books, the big dollar books from DC and the Marvel giant size books. So this book was a throwback. We had Darklight and Crew, which is a group of intergalactic freedom fighters who were fighting to free their universe from the captive clutches of the evil despot known as Regent and his regime empire. So the artists we found for it, I wanted to do something old school, old cosmic, 70s type cosmic stuff. And I found an artist who he kind of captured that feel. Aaron Mead does outstanding work. He did the pages on this book. And like I said, old school cosmic stuff. Aaron did all of this. Basically, Ran Darklight and his crew of freedom fighters, they go to this prison planet. There's a tip that there is something there that even the great Regent himself fears. And once they go there, they find Enigma the Soul Taker. Basically, Enigma, and it wraps into the theme of good and evil and if there's a cosmic being or not. Basically, Enigma claims to be, for lack of a better way to put it, he claims to be an angel crossed with a cosmic power. So basically, he would be what an angel mating with Galactus would be. And so the rest of his team thinks he's nuts. They know he's powerful, but they free him because he's the only person on this prison planet. So They figure if he's here, Regent must fear him somehow. He manages to go with Rand, Darklight, and his team in their adventures, but everything is not as it appears. And we introduce some of the other members of the team, and we also introduce the villains. The villains are oh so special. One particular villain is Shaitan. He is a power mad disciple of Regent. He does Regent's bidding, but he has plans of his own that don't necessarily involve Regent. We also have some of the other pages. We also did a little creepy. We took a creepy spin on our theology thing. Oh, and just to set the record straight, not every Advent Comics book is all religion or theology. Basically, it was a story that we wanted to tell, and we branched everything off of the premise of what if there was a God, and what if there, by extension, was a devil. So the stories kind of pan out that way. This story is Lazarus. And actually, I know that Image had a Lazarus, but our Lazarus came first by several years. Basically, it's the Lazarus of the Bible lore. He was reborn. So this Lazarus never passed away. He's living in current day and time. He is a immortal detective. And basically, Lazarus is brought in to solve a group of grisly mysteries. There's a serial killer loose in Jupiter City where Lazarus resides, and he is the only one who can stop the serial killer. So, as you can see, this is not for the faint of heart. This whole graphic novel, actually, even though it has superhero elements, this is not a kid's book. So I don't recommend giving this book to kids. And also, this book actually got us into a lot of trouble with people who were die-hard into religion and Christianity, because, as I stated, it's the first part of a bigger story. So they just saw a lot of, the serial killing, and this particular story has cursing, and basically it's a hard-boiled story about a detective who's been around and seen lifetimes of horrors, and basically how he handles it. And this is the serial killer in action. It's a character that we named Mensa. He's extremely smart, and he has an agenda, per se. So like I said, that's one of the stories in the book. And all of these stories are short jump-on stories. They will definitely be interesting, but you don't need to have a knowledge of theology or anything of that nature to follow along. This one is a bread and butter superhero book. This one is the introduction of the Alliance of Evil, and they are our villains supreme. If you had the meanest, deadliest villains all joined together into one group, this group is it. And they cross paths with a group called they cross paths with Renegade and a group of his fellow heroes.